First of all, you will not meet a busier actor, producer, director than this guy right here. I don't know how he does it. Breathe and work for the Planet of the Apes, and he's making Jungle Book. I mean, it's crazy. But like, I really have to say that when I went and saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes at the premiere, at the Hollywood premiere, it was August 31st, 2011. You know, I was so skeptical because I love the original films. I mean, I grew up with them, and because it was going to be so different because it wasn't actress and makeup, I was really just like, please God, be good. And then halfway through the film, I turned to my buddy, who's also an Apes fan, and we're like, holy shit, this movie's amazing. And I was like that all the way through to the end. I wept when I saw this movie for the first time at the end of this film. Now, like, looking back, going back to Rise, like, how proud are you that you've, like, every film has topped itself?
Oh, I mean, yeah, in so many ways. I mean, Rise was a great movie, and Rupert Wyatt came on to direct the film. I was sent the script by Joe Letteri, who was the visual effects supervisor, and who I've worked with over the last 17 years on since Lord of the Rings days. He sent me the script, and I remember reading it. People had said to me, "Look, Andy, you played King Kong. Why are you playing another monkey? You know, why are you playing another ape?" And I said, "Well, that's just like saying, why are you playing another human being? You know, it's just like there are so many different kinds of characters here. You know, 25-foot gorilla is very different to an ape who leads his civilization from bondage." But I read that script for Rise, and it really truly was the most brilliant piece of writing, a brilliant page turner, and just the arc of the character within that movie alone, it just stunned me. So yeah, I had no qualms about taking another monkey role.
But this is a role, like you just said, and at the top of this conversation too, is that to play a character over the course of a lifetime, not just like from a little kid or whatever, but like from the birth.
No, sure.
I mean, like to with this perspective now that you have over the last 6 years since Rise came out, and then Dawn in 2014, and now War, like to wrap your head around to be able to play a character, one like Caesar. Like, what was sort of like the challenge?
Well, the thing is with these movies, when you're playing a character that is non-human, is obviously to find the point of connection. I mean, these films obviously they're in their DNA, the science fiction, great science fiction, they're in their DNA, they're obviously talking about the human condition, but as an actor stepping into these things, you have to kind of go, where do I start? Well, you know, it's not just about becoming an ape, it's not just about going observing apes and doing all the research, it's about first of all, how do you become that ape, and then how do you lead the audience through that story with you, and let them see the world in that way and experience it viscerally. So really, it's about. I mean, just to very briefly kind of encapsulate the journey over the three films. In the first film, I wanted to start by thinking about Caesar as an outsider. He's an outsider. He's an orphan. He's about to be thrown on the scrap heap. And then he is rescued and taken home and brought up by human beings. And I'd known from my research that apes who are surrounded by human beings reflect their behaviour incredibly closely. We're obviously 97% genetically the same. So I always played Caesar in the first movie very closely as a chimpanzee, obviously, but also as a human in an ape's skin, or that's what he thought. I mean, he's brought up with a great amount of love. He's cherished and nourished and brought into the world, you know, by James Franco's character, Will, and John Lithgow, his grandfather figure, with a great amount of love, and so he has no idea that he is anything other than human. And so for a time, it felt like I based him on two things: a real life chimpanzee called Oliver, who was very human in his physical attributes, his way he carried himself and his facial expressions, but also I thought about him as a very gifted child, someone who has super intelligence as a child, who can play, you know, those children who can play piano concertos or do very complicated mathematical equations when they're very, very young, because of the intelligence drug that's coursing through his veins. So, and then it's only in his teenage years that he actually sees his skin for the first time. He sees the fact that he is an ape when he's cast out, thrown into the sanctuary with his own kind. And it's this sense of this otherness, being this other, which allows him, therefore, to have empathy towards all these disparate groups of apes. So gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, bonobos. He's able to connect with them all because he's not tribal, because he understands what it is to be other, and therefore he can connect with them. And then he leads them to freedom. In the second film, it was less about kind of becoming a chimpanzee and more about becoming a leader. Caesar becomes the leader. Not only he becomes a father figure also, and has his own family, but he becomes the leader of an entirely new civilization, the birth of the dawn of a new civilization. So what are the belief systems? What are the tenets of belief? How's he going to govern? How's he going to, again, keep peace? And also the sort of the conflict that's flaring up between the ape community and the surviving humans. How's he going to keep that together? So I based him on leaders that I totally respected, and that leader was Nelson Mandela, and so I focused very much on Caesar in that movie about leadership. And in this last movie, as Caesar's evolving, not only aging and growing and becoming a leader in a time of war, but he's also evolving, physically changing, becoming more eloquent with speech, becoming more physically human-like, more emotionally and intellectually more human-like. But the fact of the matter is that this film, I didn't really look outside of myself, because the events that happened at the beginning of the movie, as you've just seen, having his family ripped away from him, I really had to ask myself, if that were to happen to me, how would I respond? Would I ever be capable of forgiveness? Would I ever be able to feel empathy towards, someone who'd taken my family? And that was the job of my role in this movie, and therefore, from the audience's point of view, being able to encourage them to see the world through Caesar's eyes. So it was a this last film was a very personal and at times very dark experience, the making of this film, for that reason.
You know, when you throughout the conversation in talking about playing an ape, but part of the appeal, in fact, a large part of the appeal of Apes movies, the Planet of the Apes movies, old and new, is that oftentimes, especially in these last three, Caesar was the most human character of them all. And especially in the first film, he was a man, if you will, of very few words. He said, no, and Caesar is home, and that was it. But it was the performance. It was the performance that grabbed the audience. It was the performance that evolved through the course of these movies. It is a true performance, and I think it's one that's often overlooked because of the technological side, the performance capture. But it is still a performance. You and Terry Notary and Steve Zahn in this film, you're all giving performances.
Karen Carnival.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But my question really is just like, in what ways do you feel that the performance capture performance needs to sort of break through and be given the same level of respect that like something Meryl Streep would do?
Well, it's interesting. The whole notion and the debate about performance capture and what it is, it is an interesting one, because people, for some reason, there's a shroud of mystery over playing a character like this, that it is something other than acting, that it's... And I understand that. I understand, because a lot has been made of the technology, but that's all it is. It is a technology. And people have said to me, well, Andy, do you think there should be some sort of special category to acknowledge roles that are created using this technology? And my answer is always no. Because, it's like saying, Andy, do you think there should be a special category for people who wear prosthetic makeup? Do you think there should be a special category for Charles Norton playing the Hunchback of Notre Dame, or a special category for John Hurt playing the Elephant Man, or Gary Oldman playing Winston Churchill? Because they are completely disguised. These actors are giving performances that are completely disguised. You would never recognise them at all. The artistry from the makeup team completely blends with the performance. It's they're indivisible, and that's the same with this technology. Except you're not wearing makeup when you're going on set. The makeup is applied in effect after the fact, and so my answer is always no. It really is. People have to understand that this is a 21st century filming tool that enables actors to act and then be manifested on screen afterwards. But the performance itself is no different to any other kind of live action acting.
And also, like I said, you know, Caesar is a character of few words. I mean, he says a little more, and his dialect becomes more clear and more cleaner, I should say, as the films evolve. But it's still, the more you act and emote, I mean, that's a true performance. I mean, if you look at Holly Hunter in The Piano, right, she said nothing and won an Academy Award for it. I mean, it was the acting, it was the performance. And to be able to emote, and like, what are the challenges really to bring that emotion through, even though, you know, when you're filming it, you're wearing the outfit and the everything, and still allow the performance to shine through, especially when there isn't a whole lot of dialogue.
I mean, in a way, great cinema roles. I mean, I love silent movies for that reason, because there's so much is conveyed through you know, through the emotion that you can see and read in an actor's face. You know, the close-up, and there are many close-ups in this movie, and that's one of the great. I mean, Matt Reeves is a brilliant filmmaker. He's just an extraordinary filmmaker, and you know, this is a very epic movie on a big mythic landscape. But the story is told very much internally as well, you know, and that balance is there, and it's all carried in the same way that you know, great performances are delivered with close-up. He's not shied away from it just because we're using a technology here. I mean, you know, you watch a film, and the difference between, you know, theatre is very wordy. It's a play. You listen to a play, but you watch a film, and when you watch a film, you're watching performances, and you're watching and feeling and viscerally connecting with all manner of you know, performances which often don't have lots of dialogue. You know, for instance,
with the War for the Planet of the Apes. Now, for a good year, reading about the production. I know last year when we talked at Comic-Con in New York about the movie last October, a year ago, I thought it was going to be just like wall-to-wall action, and it's not. I mean, it starts off with the big action scene, but then I realized the war is within. The war is within Caesar, and you like the way, like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was this, like, you know, you see the apes and the humans, like, they're on the same level playing field because they're equal numbers. You know, Dawn was brilliant, Matt Reeves did a terrific job, and he did a terrific job in this one too. But looking back, and the final scenes that you filmed as Caesar, knowing that this was it, like, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, Matt, I knew the story, obviously, and we had the script. And of course, when you're shooting out of sequence. So sort of, I remember about 2.5 months, 3 months into the shoot, we're suddenly shooting the very final scene, and it was an extraordinary. The atmosphere on set was very bizarre that day, because Karen, who plays Maurice so beautifully, and I, you know, and Matt, we moved up onto the top of that hill, and we talked about the scene, and we just thought, okay, how are we going to do this? And at that time, we were not sure exactly how we were going to play, you know, Caesar slipping away, whether it was going to be conclusively that he dies, whether that we see him bring his people to the promised land and then just sit back and then drift off, or how we were going to play it. We had no idea, none of us. And so we experimented with it, and we played it, and we tried it lots of different ways, and then very much the last take is what you saw, which is on that day where we just said, well, let's go the whole way, and then damn it, that's the one I went with. Otherwise, I might still have another film.
Well, you know, we still haven't gotten to that story yet, if you know what I mean. And in Rise, I don't know if you know, what was the last time you all saw Rise? I watched it when they had the triple feature over the summer. So, you know, the spacecraft, the mission to Mars, it gets lost. Where'd it go? Where did it go? You know where it went. It went into the future. And I thought about it. Okay, this is my pitch. All right? Seriously, I got it, Dave. So this is how you come back, okay? Don't tell anyone. But this is what happens. So now, okay, we've seen that it's now the Planet of the Apes, okay? So, the original novel that Pierre Boulle wrote in 1963, Monkey Planet, was the apes were technologically advanced. But when Franklin Schaffner filmed the original film in '67, it came out in '68, it was they didn't have the money to make the technologically advanced apes, so they made them primitive but still intelligent, and it worked, and it was great, and it's a masterpiece. But now, with today's technology, you could have a technologically advanced ape society 2,000 years into the future. So imagine those astronauts who went to Mars come back to the future and find a technologically advanced society run by apes, and you're playing a very distant descendant of Caesar. What do you think? I want to open up to the audience because I know you've got questions. But while you're thinking of questions, I want to say, when Rise of the Apes came out in 2011, the Critics' Choice Awards, which is voted for by the Broadcast Film Critics Association, of which, full disclosure, I'm a member, Caesar, Andy Serkis, was nominated for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and I really hope that especially with the arc of the films and the culmination of a landmark film trilogy, that gets recognized again. So, are you with me on this, everybody? Now, who has a question? Someone's got to have a question. Yes, you.
Are there limitations or challenges that you face trying to get your performance across using the mocap technology?
Yeah, so limitations or challenges with using the technology. I mean, you just don't think about it when you're wearing a suit. I mean, this is what you wear to go to work. So it's like putting on a costume and makeup. It's a very specific costume and makeup. It doesn't look anything like an ape suit, or in the original movies, you would have spent 5 hours in the morning putting on layers of prosthetics. But I mean, I've watched documentaries about the early film, and Kim Hunter always talks about how difficult it was to act using that makeup, because it was like you're having to fight through an artifact. You're having to fight through layers of foam and latex and rubber, and she said all we could do to keep those faces animated was to keep moving our faces and moving our mouths and brows just to get some expression into that, because it was so heavy, the makeup. With this, it's the opposite. You can play totally internally. The capture technology is so subtle, and the fidelity to what you're actually doing as an actor is now so advanced that it means that you can really play internally, which means you can play those close-ups without having to, with just concentrating on the emotion of the character. So all you're concentrating on is the other actor. And for instance, my scenes with Woody, the very fact that he's in a costume and makeup, and I happen to be in a suit, and I've got dots on my face, you kind of forget about, I think Woody was worried for about 2 seconds, and then when we started acting together, he immediately forgets, and that's what we do as actors. We use our imagination. So it's. I mean, I've never found it limiting in any way. In fact, it's quite liberating. It's quite freeing. Thank you.
Yes, right here. Nice and loud, please.
Well, thank you for your brilliant performance, by the way. And the question that I have...
Take this.
Thank you very much. The question that I have is that I can't really help myself noticing this similarity between your character and Shakespeare's Hamlet and Bible's Moses, because in a way you are taking a journey for the revenge, and at the same time you try to avoid it, but you ended up doing, leading these people to the promised land. So, like, what do you think?
That was very much in the way that Matt and Mark Wambach, the writer, wanted to approach this movie. That it was the closing chapter of the Caesar cycle, as they called it, where if you look back from 1,000 years in the future, they would be able to, the ape society would be able to turn and go, that was the seminal ape character that brought the ape civilization to the promised land. So they, when they were writing this movie, they spent a lot of time sitting in this theatre watching biblical epics like the Ten Commandments, Moses, you know, and then they watched big epics like The Bridge Over the River Kwai, and you know, and westerns and Kurosawa, and you know, they watched big epic mythic stories, but focusing on, you know, and the big biblical epics too, precisely for that reason, that they wanted to have it as a sort of quasi, you know, Moses character, have Caesar be a quasi-Moses-like character. And there is something also very Shakespearean about this. I mean, the relationship of Caesar to Maurice as well, you know, their relationship is almost like a King Lear to Gloucester relationship, so that is absolutely where they were heading with the writing, to give it that resonance and to give it that big mythic stage. Yeah.
And right there.
Simply awesome. I just want to say that. I'm a huge Apes fan. And in terms of the technology, once you went into post, was there what kind of additional work did you need to do in post? I mean, usually you'd have reshoots or something like this, but in this case, with the 3D artists, looping, voiceover, things like that, what kinds of work did you put in working with the post artists?
Well, the great thing about capture is that you can always go back, and it means you don't have to go and necessarily shoot on location. Like, for instance, every single ape in that movie, and that means I'm talking about the thousands of apes in those big scenes, every single one of them is played by an actor. Right? They're not animated. Every single one is played by an actor. So what was shot on location were the plates, and you'd have, but when we were doing it, say those scenes at the end, the Exodus, you know, you'd have about 10 people there, 20 people max, you know, walking the route, and then you'd go back into the motion capture stage, which is a stage about as big as this room, and then you'd do multiple passes with actors playing the entire Exodus. Or for instance, the apes when they were in the cage scenes, you know. So the great thing about it is you can go back and refine and pick up, and there are many scenes. In fact, there's one scene. The scene. I mean, we did it on a lot of occasions when we wanted to refine and hone performance. You can go back in and do the same thing, and you can do it quite late on into the shoot, so it moves at the same pace as the edit. And Matt will have ideas, and then Matt has also directed me from LA whilst I've been in London at my motion capture stage, the Imaginarium. He's been able to, by Skype, direct me. I've been on my motion capture stage back in London, and we've been picking up shots. In fact, for Dawn, the very final shot of Dawn, we shot 2 weeks before the final film came out. That shot which pushes in on Caesar's eyes, and we shot that whilst Matt was in LA and I was back in London. So it's a wonderful tool that enables this ability to keep refining, keep honing, keep the storytelling moving forward without having to go back onto location. Once you've got the plates, once you've got the shots, you know, you've shot on the location, and you're placing something into a location that you can keep working on.
Right there.
Forgive me if I sound repetitive, but what parts, not just with, you know, war, but maybe with like Rise and Dawn and stuff, what parts do you find most humorous? And I'm not talking about just like hot loud humorous, like, oh, it makes you, I guess, thank you, if that makes any sense.
Well, that makes you, sorry, the last bit?
Like humor-wise, it's not, you know, humor's not just funny. Humor can be other things as well, like other,
sure.
You know, implications.
Sure, it's observational as well. I mean, humour is. Do you mean in working on the character to find those moments, or?
Yeah,
or?
not just with Caesar, but maybe you can interact with the other characters as well.
Yeah, I mean, do you mean what, you know? Did we have what was it funny on set with the other actors, or do you mean in search of humour?
Just in search of humour.
Right. Yeah, I mean the balance of these films, you know, they are serious by nature, but there's always room for humour, and it's. you know, they're tiny observational things. For instance, in this movie, the relationship between Caesar and Nova, the young girl. You know, I mean, he doesn't want to take her with him on the journey, but we wanted to have a relationship between them that was, you know, he keeps her at bay at first, but then she's sort of, there's a sort of wry humour in the way that she pushes him and pushes his buttons a little bit, you know, and so it's just discovering those little moments. I mean, of course, there are broader moments of humour with Steve Zahn's character, Bad Ape, which is an amazing comedic character, and he did such an incredible job. I mean, he really did. And playing those scenes with him, yeah, big hand for Steve Zahn. It's such a wonderful character, and again, the humour that he had in that character isn't played for laughs. It's played for the true pathos of that character. I mean, and that's what I suppose I'm saying. It's always bedded down with an emotional truth and emotional reality. But the situation can be funny, and the, you know, again, the relationship between Caesar and this bizarre kind of hoarding, you know, monkey that is another monkey that speaks for the first time. That relationship is really, you know, and Steve is a comedian too. He's a great comedian, but he wanted to play the sadness of the character, the fact that he also had lost a child, and he was this lonely kind of hobo living up in the mountains, sort of collecting things for wanting for company. So that it's always that the humour is always there, because you need humour, of course, in all of the films. Even Koba in the second film, when you first, you know, before he shoots those guys, when he goes to the human camp, there's a huge amount of humour in the way that he lolls about and does that forward roll and pretends to play dumb and all of that, and you get suckered into that moment, and then suddenly bang, you know, and he's shooting them all. So it is used for moments of levity to increase and intensify the drama.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes. All three movies are out on Blu-ray. They're all together in a beautiful box set that you should absolutely own, because, like I said, this is a brilliant trilogy from start to finish. A brilliant, groundbreaking, landmark performance by Andy Serkis. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Thanks,